business is now in order. And so if you make a motion, let me remind you to please give a written copy of it to the page at your microphone who can bring it to the platform. In a large room, I will remind you again that it is easier and much more efficient and much more accurate if you submit it through the SBC annual meeting app, or you could just email it to recording secretary@sbc.net. That is a way of doing that. That does not constitute the filing of a motion. That is just a way of getting it to us. Be sure, of course, that your name and the name of your church are attached to your motion. Under the rules, I will remind you that all motions are referred to the Committee on Order of Business. Please note, okay, and I say this as kindly as I can because I know what a temptation it is for all of us. This is not the time not the time to debate the motions. It is only the time to make the motion, which means there is short, it has action words in it. This is not a time to go on. And I know you want to try to sneak in there some argumentation, but save that for when the motion is debated later, okay? All right, the time of that business is now open. 2A, you have a motion.
I do. Mr. President, my name is Jay Adkins. I'm pastor and messenger of First Baptist Church of West Owego, Louisiana. In light of concerns raised by legal counsel provided and seemingly contradictory opinions about significant matters facing the convention, I move that this body request that the Executive Committee study and report back to this convention at the 2022 annual meeting the question of whether or not there is an inherent conflict of interest in the convention and the Executive Committee being represented by the same legal counsel.
Do I hear a second? Okay, if you will bring your motion to the front. 2B.
Yes, Alan Nelson, messenger from Second Baptist Perryville, Arkansas. I move that the 2021-2022 proposed SBC Cooperative Program allocation budget be amended to prohibit any funds from being allocated for the paying of any third-party independent investigation into any allegations related to the ERLC or Executive Committee until proper steps have been taken first to enlist a group of 7 Southern Baptist pastors with at least 15 years of pastoral experience to investigate the allegations and bring a report and recommendation to the messengers gathered at the 2022 convention.
Is there a second? Second. Okay, if you also will bring your motion to the front if you have not already turned it in. 2C.
My name is Alan Murray, and I'm a messenger from the Centerville Baptist Church in Kelly, North Carolina. I simply rise to request that the Executive Committee consider adding a fellowship meal Sunday to the Southern Baptist calendar. If this comes to debate, I would love to give merit to my motion.
I'm almost afraid to ask for a second. If you'll bring your motion here to the front if you haven't already turned it in.
Ask 9A if he has a point of order.
9A, do you have a point of order? Messenger at 9A.
Yes, Mr. President. I was not recognized during the time where we adopted the order of business, and I had an amendment to propose to that order of business. So my name is Cody Barnhart. I am a messenger from First Baptist Alcoa in Alcoa, Tennessee, and I move to amend the order of business to include the following.
Sir, unfortunately, that time had expired, and I know that would be frustrating, but that is not every motion is able to get into that time, and so that motion is not in order at this point.
All right. Thank you.
9A to make a motion.
9A now to make a motion.
President, my name is Tom Askell. I'm the pastor of Grace Baptist Church, Cape Coral, Florida, a messenger from there. Pursuant to the provision made in Robert's Rules of Order, newly revised sections 35.1 and 35.2, I move that this convention rescind Resolution 9 that was adopted in the waning moments of the 2019 convention in Birmingham, Alabama.
I will assume that constitutes as a second, and so you can bring it here to the front if you haven't already done so.
It's been sent in electronically.
Thank you.
Thank you.
9B, a motion.
My name is Jared Longshore. I'm a pastor of Grace Baptist Church in Cape Coral, Florida. In light of private correspondence of the immediate past president of the ERLC, purportedly leaked by a third party, in which he speaks of wickedness committed in his presence behind closed doors involving gutter-level racism, mishandling sexual abuse, mistreatment of sexual abuse victims, a pattern of intimidation, and resistance to sexual abuse reform initiatives. I move that the messengers ask the newly elected president of the Southern Baptist Convention to appoint a task force to select a Christian third party made up of SBC pastors to investigate the ERLC staff and board regarding their involvement in the past president's alleged concealment of grievous sin and his handling of the same. I further move that such an investigation include all current and former staff and board activities and confidential ERLC records back to 2018, and that the task force report back to our convention at our next annual meeting with the findings of the investigation, as well as any recommendations for actions to be taken by our convention.
Thank you, Jared. Is there a second? Please file your motion. 9C.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm Ted Traylor, messenger from Olive Baptist Church, Pensacola, Florida. I move the Executive Committee of the Southern Baptist Convention consider removing the Resolutions Committee from the legal documentation bylaws and the annual function of the Southern Baptist Convention.
Thank you, Ted. Is there a second? If you will file your motion, Pastor Ted. Thank you. 8A.
Grant Gaines, messenger from Bel Air Baptist Church in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. In light of recent allegations made against the Executive Committee of mishandling sexual abuse cases, I stand with SBC Church abuse survivors, and right now I'm standing beside one such SBC Church abuse survivor. And I move that the Southern Baptist Convention, meeting June 15th to 16th, 2021 in Nashville, Tennessee, ask the newly elected president of the SBC to appoint a task force within 30 days of the date of this convention that shall be comprised of members of Baptist churches cooperating with this convention and experts in sexual abuse and the handling of sexual abuse-related dynamics. This task force shall either assume oversight of the third-party review announced previously by the Executive Committee or initiate a separate third-party review. Said task force shall ensure that the third-party review includes an investigation into any allegations of abuse, mishandling of abuse, mistreatment of victims, a pattern of intimidation of victims or advocates, and resistance to sexual abuse reform initiatives. The investigation shall include actions and decisions of staff and members of the Executive Committee from January 1st, 2000 to June 14th, 2021. This investigation should include an audit of the procedures and actions taken by the Credentials Committee of the Southern Baptist Convention, which was formed at the convention meeting in Birmingham, Alabama, June 11th and 12th, 2019. The review shall be funded by allocations from the cooperative program. We further move that the task force agree that the accepted best standards and practices as recommended by the commission third party, including but not limited to the Executive Committee staff and members waiving attorney-client privilege in order to ensure full access to information and accuracy in the review. A written report of the factual findings of this review shall be presented to the task force 30 days prior to the SBC annual meeting in 2022 and made public in full form within 1 week of the task force receipt of the report, along with suggestions from the task force for actions to be taken by our convention. Quite frankly, SBC messengers and especially SBC abuse survivors deserve to know the truth.
I again will assume that this constitutes as a second. Make sure you have filed your motion. Thank you, Pastor Grant. 1A.
Yes, James Walker, Fielder Church, Arlington, Texas. I make a motion requesting that the North American Mission Board undertake a study of the Enneagram, exploring its spiritual and theological essence and teachings, and that they report back to the annual SBC meeting in 2022.
Is there a second? Please file your motion. 4A.
Mr. President, my name is Peter Lumpkins. I'm a messenger from the North Hall Baptist Church in Gainesville, Georgia. I move according to the rules the convention reserves for itself, namely the right to consider and amend the body of all reports, bylaw 31, that in the book of reports, under matters referred by the convention, number 2, the section beginning with the first paragraph after response and the words after the termination, that's page 176, through the close of the section on 178 to be stricken from the 2021 Book of Reports.
Is there a second? Please file your motion. 4B.
Mr. President, pursuant to Robert Rules of Order, which allow for the order of business to be amended by a 2/3 vote after it is adopted, and in order to provide the messengers of the Southern Baptist Convention with additional time to discuss the important issues before them, I, Joseph Horan, from Starkville Community Church in Starkville, Mississippi, move that the Southern Baptist Convention meeting June 15th and 16th, 2021 in Nashville, Tennessee, direct the Committee on the Order of Business to take the following actions in amending the order of business in order to provide that time. 1, extend the time allotted for consideration of new motions by not less than 10 minutes at each of the morning and afternoon sessions on Tuesday, June 15th. 2, extend the time allotted for consideration of miscellaneous business by not less than 10 minutes at the afternoon session on Tuesday, June 15th. And 3, extend the time allotted for consideration of resolutions by not less than 10 minutes during each of the Committee on Resolution reports during the afternoon session of Tuesday, June 15th.
Is there a second? All right, give me a second on this one. All right. In other words, stand at ease for just a moment, okay?
Look, I'll tell anybody, I trust the people in this room. I'm not going to agree with them, but I need to talk to them. We'll talk together. I didn't bring my power suit, man. I'm jealous of you.
Okay. Let me call you back to order. If we have a motion and a second, if you are in favor of the motion, would you please indicate so by uplifted ballot. If you are not in favor of the motion to extend the time, would you also indicate that by uplifted ballot? Where is the point of order? Section, we didn't need you on a microphone, sir.
Bedford, Michigan.
Yes, sir.
If memory serves me correct, thanks for the light. If, say, memory serves me correct, he asked for a 2/3 vote, which means a 2/3 vote can't be used by just a simple waving of hands. It has been moved, it has been seconded, which means that we all have to take our ballots and go stick them in. It's the, say, equivalent to a roll call vote.
Yeah.
The point of order is not well taken. However, the chair could not determine
Yeah.
the vote. We're going to have
So, to your point of order, in a 2/3 ballot, it is still acceptable to do so by an uplifted ballot. However, I have good news for you. The chair could not determine that it was 2/3, so we are going to have a ballot vote, so everyone's happy, okay? So I'm going to chair recognizes Don Currents to come, and if he will lead us in that ballot vote. So just so you're aware, we are obtaining the written motion so that we can read it in its entirety to you again for clarity when you vote, and then Don Currents, our registration secretary, will give you instructions on specifically how to vote and which ballot to use. So hang tight for just a moment. So will the messenger that made the motion, because it hasn't been pre-filed and because we were waiting on, if you could go back to a microphone and read it again?
Yes. Is microphone 2?
Am I on? Yes. In order to provide the messengers of the Southern Baptist Convention with additional time to discuss the important issues before them, I move that the Southern Baptist Convention meeting June 15th and 16th of 2021 in Nashville, Tennessee, direct the Committee on the Order of Business to take the following actions in amending the order of business in order to provide that time. 1, extend the time allotted for consideration of new motions by not less than 10 minutes at each of the morning and afternoon sessions of Tuesday, June 15th. 2, extend the time allotted for consideration of miscellaneous business by not less than 10 minutes at the afternoon session on Tuesday, June 15th. And 3, extend the time allotted for consideration of resolutions by not less than 10 minutes during each of the Committee on Resolutions reports during the afternoon session of Tuesday, June 15th. Mr. President, may I speak to the motion?
Briefly, sir.
Just briefly, brothers and sisters, we need to talk about some things. We need some time that is not locked in an agenda, and we need the ability to let more voices speak into these issues. So I highly encourage you to vote yes on this motion.
So are you ready for the question? I'm going to ask Don Currence if he would come and instruct us. The Committee on Order Business has some questions, so the chair recognizes Adam Greenway.
If I hear and understand the mover of the motion correctly, I think I heard that what you're looking to do is to extend the time, and I believe you used the term for the consideration of motions, and I think you used the language of we need to have time to talk through issues. Did I hear you correctly, Messenger at microphone 2?
4.
4, I'm sorry.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
The time for consideration of motions, miscellaneous business, and the consideration of resolution report.
Okay. Just to clarify for the benefit of messengers, the time we've just gone through here for the introduction of motions and the time scheduled for this afternoon at 4:10 is a time only for the introduction of motions. Motions are not considered in any way at that time. You can't speak to it. There's no debate. You simply move the motion. There's a second, and it's automatically referred to the Committee on Order of Business. There actually is only the consideration and, if you will, debate on motions related to when the Committee on Order of Business reports out what is the committee's recommendation about how motions should be handled. That comes up during the for the first time, it'll be at 6:10 tonight, the Committee on Order of Business second report, and 8:30 tomorrow morning for the third report of the Committee on Order of Business. If there are matters that in the committee's determination and with the concurrence of the body are meant for consideration, those would not occur until 8:40 on Wednesday morning. The time on Tuesday afternoon labeled for miscellaneous business, 5:50 p.m., under Bylaw 8 is specifically there if there are challenges to the credentials of churches deemed to be in friendly cooperation with the convention. It's not a time for us to schedule consideration of any motions. It's merely a time if there are credential challenges. That's when that is done under Bylaw 8. So I just want to make sure that the messenger, if I understand what he is trying to do, I don't think the wording precisely would get to what you want to do, and there is not yet any determination by our committee, and there won't be until we start to work through the motions that have come, as to what kind of deliberation would be asked to be carried out by the convention versus following the convention's long-established protocols and guiding documents about how motions are to be handled.
May I speak to that, Mr. President?
Yes, sir.
According to the simplified Robert's Rules of Order, it is correct that once the agenda is set, new business has to be considered later, except for a change to the actual agenda, which does require a 2/3 vote. This would be a change to the actual agenda that we've already approved. And this would specifically apply to the sessions listed in this motion.
If I may respond, again, if I heard your motion correctly, I don't have a written copy yet. You asked to extend the time for the introduction of motions in this session and the introduction of motions in the Tuesday afternoon session. I believe also for the Resolutions Committee reports, the 2 blocks in the afternoon, and I think also even the miscellaneous business time. Again, if I'm hearing you correctly, under the convention's rules, which Robert's Rules kicks in areas where there is need for clarifying what the convention's rules are not clear about. The convention's rules are that the time for introduction of motions is not a time for the consideration of motions. It is merely a time for introduction. No debate on any motion is entertained in the agenda item labeled the introduction of motions. So the motion to extend the time would be merely a time to allow for additional new motions to be made. It would not allow for the consideration or deliberation about any motions at that point in time. And in the same way, the miscellaneous business, the way that the Southern Baptist Convention annual meeting has defined that particular session, is for issues that arise during the convention related to credentials committee and challenging churches in friendly cooperation with the convention under Article 3. That's what that session is for. It is only the sessions labeled previously scheduled business that theoretically could be extended in terms of giving time for the body to debate items that would be recommended for scheduling by the Committee on Order of Business and adopted by the convention in those times. So again, I'm just trying to make sure in terms of understanding what it is I think you want to do. Now, the time for the Resolutions Committee report could be extended, but in terms of everything you're asking for in your motion, I think there are different things you're trying to do, and what you're attempting to accomplish is not exactly in keeping with what the items on the agenda are designed to do.
So are you ready for the question? I'm going to ask Don Current, if he would, to come and instruct us on the ballot vote.
In favor of amending the agenda as read, yes or no?
Okay. At this time, we have registered 14,827 messengers. Please take out your ballot and turn to ballot number 1. Make sure it's only ballot number 1. So go ahead and tear out your ballot now. Again, only ballot number 1. Make sure ballot 2 is not stuck to that. This is what it says in bylaws number 10, item F. In order to cast a ballot, a messenger must be present at the time the vote is taken. Voting by proxy is not permitted. Please get ready to vote now, ballot number 1, and mark it the following way. If you're in favor of, I want clarification of the motion. You said the wording. You're in favor of the motion. Okay.
Favor the motion to amend the agenda.
Okay. If you're in favor of the motion to amend the agenda, place an X on the circle, mark yes. The circle. So if you're in favor of changing the agenda, then put an X over yes. If you're opposed, then place an X over the circle no. Okay. Okay. When completed, please pass your ballots to the aisles, and they will be picked up by an usher or teller.
Okay, so brace yourself here. Time for the introduction of new motions has expired. And a large portion of it was spent asking if we would extend the time to consider motions later. So unless there is an objection, I'm going to ask that we extend this time by 3 minutes in order to make sure that we honor not only the spirit of our brother's proposal, but also I know that the amount of time that we had set to be able to receive new motions for business. So second, okay, and if you're in favor of that extension of time by 3 minutes, if you would indicate so by raising your ballot. All opposed, same sign. Okay. 8B. Would love a great brief motion here.
Thank you for your leadership, Mr. Chairman. Bob Dutton, messenger from Salem Baptist Church, Mannequin Sabbath, Virginia. A motion related to critical race theory. Whereas government entities, states, counties, and school boards across America are trying to force critical race theory on our society, whereas critical race theory is not a Christian idea, but comes out of radical Marxism, whereas critical race theory is out to destroy Christianity in this nation, whereas the tenets of critical race theory focus on putting man above God. Therefore, be it resolved that the SBC in Nashville stand against critical race theory, and be it further resolved that the SBC direct Lifeway Christian Resources to provide and publish materials to teach our churches about the dangers of critical race theory, and be it further resolved that the SBC directs our 6 seminaries to teach about the dangers of critical race theory, and that the ERLC also provide and publish materials that give Christians true information about the dangers of critical race theory.
Thank you, sir. Again, the chair recognizes the response as a second. Make sure you filed your motion. 5A.
Thank you, Dr. Greear. I too stand with a survivor, and it's my privilege to make this motion on behalf of SBC survivors. Todd Benkert, messenger from Oak Creek Community Church in Mishawaka, Indiana. I move to request the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission to hire an outside organization to oversee an audit and assessment of sexual abuse within the SBC. The organization shall be authorized to receive and assess over the next 3 years both reports of sexual abuse, allegations of mishandling abuse from voluntarily participating churches, victims, and witnesses. Because participation in the assessment is strictly voluntary, the assessment will not be exhaustive, but rather aim to provide broad spectrum data and analysis on rates of abuse, allegations, mishandling of abuse allegations, and patterns related to said allegations. I further move that we ask the ERLC to include the organization's preliminary findings in their 2022 and 2023 annual reports and submit a final report including the organization's recommendations for our churches, entities, and denominational structures for the 2024 annual meeting.
Is there a second? Please file your motion. Finally, we have 5B. And if we could get the light on that so our brother or sister's not in the dark there.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Brian King, messenger from Harvest Community Church in Eugene, Oregon. On Thursday, June 17, 2021, the 9 U.S. Supreme Court justices will be in conference to consider NAM's petition to SCOTUS in the case with Dr. Will McCraney. Given the recent court filings of NAM and the ERLC over the relationships between the SBC and its entities and other Baptist bodies, I move that the SBC, as soon as it is possible, investigate the legal claims presented in the NAM and ERLC court filings in the U.S. Supreme Court and other federal courts to determine if NAM and/or ERLC legal claims or statements conflict with the governing documents of the SBC and/or the historical relationships between the SBC, SBC entities, and other Baptist bodies, namely autonomous state Baptist conventions, autonomous Baptist associations, and autonomous local churches. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Is there a second? Please file your motion. Time for the introduction of new business has expired. After the 3-minute extension and even a generous interpretation of that, the chair recognizes